Hello and welcome. So today we're going to pull back the curtain on how modern AI agents are actually built. And I'm not talking about simple chatbots here. We're going way beyond that into these powerful, autonomous systems that can handle complex jobs all by themselves. Okay, let's jump right in.
To really get what makes these agents so different, just think about old-school automation versus a true AI agent. Your traditional automation, well, it's just following a super strict checklist. It does exactly what it's told, and that's it. An AI agent, though, it's more like a seasoned investigator. It can look at the evidence, understand the context, see the subtle patterns, and make a judgment call even when there isn't a clear rulebook to follow.
So let's get a clear definition on the table. What is an agent really? At its heart, it's a system that uses a large language model, an LLM, to independently run multi-step tasks and entire workflows for you. It's not just about answering one question, it's about actually getting a whole job done, from the very first step to the very last.
So here's our game plan for this explainer. We're going to start with the big idea of what an agent is. Then we'll break down the 3 core building blocks. After that, we'll get into orchestration, which is just a fancy word for making agents cooperate. We'll walk through a super practical case study with a travel agent, cover the absolutely critical topic of safety guardrails, and finally, talk about how you can build your first one.
Okay, first up, let's really nail down the core idea here. What truly sets an agent apart from everything that came before. It's all about its ability to manage an entire workflow, not just one single, isolated task.
So when does it actually make sense to build an agent? Well, they really start to shine where the old methods just fall apart. Think about processes that require complex, nuanced decision-making, or systems that have thousands of hard-coded rules that are an absolute nightmare to maintain. And maybe most importantly, they are fantastic at understanding messy, unstructured data. Things like emails, documents, or customer conversations.
All right, so now that we know what they are and where they're useful, let's pop the hood and see how they're actually built. It turns out, every single agent, no matter how complex it seems, is made from 3 fundamental components. You can think of this as the basic anatomy of an agent.
And the core concept is actually pretty simple. First up, you've got the model. This is the LLM, and it acts as the agent's brain. It does all the thinking and reasoning. Second, you have the tools. These are the agent's hands. They let it actually do things in the real world, like search the web, access a database, or call an API. And third, you've got the instructions. This is the rulebook you give the agent that defines its goals, its personality, and its boundaries.
Okay, so you've got the brain, the hands, and the rulebook for one agent. But what happens when a problem is too big or too complex for a single agent to handle? Well, that's where orchestration comes in. It's the art of making multiple agents work together, like a well-oiled team. Let's see how that works.
The first common way to do this is called the manager pattern. It's pretty much what it sounds like. You have one central manager agent that acts like a project lead. It doesn't do all the heavy lifting itself. Instead, it figures out what needs to be done and delegates those tasks to other, more specialized agents. For instance, it might tell a research agent to go find some information and then pass that info to a writing agent to summarize it. The second major pattern is decentralized. In this model, the agents work more like peers on an assembly line. One agent might start a task, like handling an initial customer question, and then completely hand off control to the next agent in the chain, maybe a sales specialist or a technical support agent, who then takes over the workflow. All right, that's enough theory. Let's make this all feel a bit more real with a concrete example. We're going to look at a helpful travel agent built visually without a single line of code. This is where we'll see all these concepts really come to life.
So the very first challenge our travel agent faces is this. It has to understand what the user actually wants. If someone types, "What should I do in Tokyo?" the agent needs to figure out if that's a request for an itinerary or something else. It's a classic decision-making problem.
And check this out. This is a perfect illustration of that manager pattern we were just talking about. The main agent acts as a dispatcher. It uses a classifier with simple if-else logic to figure out the user's intent, and then it routes the request to the correct specialist, either the flight agent or the itinerary agent. So, what happens once the request gets sent to the flight agent? Well, now it's time to use its tools. In this case, it calls a web search function. Why? To get real-time, up-to-the-minute flight information. This is the agent's hands in action, reaching out into the world to grab the data it needs.
And here's where it gets really, really cool. The agent doesn't just spit back a boring wall of text. It can actually generate a rich, interactive widget to display all the flight details. It even has a custom background color based on the destination. This is a great example of how agents can create a way better user experience.
Now, giving an agent the power to take real action is obviously incredible, but it also comes with a lot of responsibility. So we have to ask the critical question. How do we make sure these things operate safely and predictably? That's where guardrails come in. You should think of guardrails as multiple layers of defense. For example, you can have a relevance classifier to keep the agent from going off topic. You can have a safety classifier that's trained to spot malicious inputs. You can build in filters to protect sensitive personal information. You can even make the agent assess the risk of each tool before it runs and require extra checks for high-risk actions.
But let's be real, no automated system is ever going to be absolutely perfect. And that's why one of the most important rules is to always plan for human intervention. For anything high stakes or irreversible, like, say, issuing a huge refund, having a human in the loop to give the final okay is the ultimate safety net. It's just non-negotiable.
Okay, we have covered a lot of ground. The what, the how, and the why of building agents. So let's wrap this all up with a clear, actionable path for how you can get started and actually deploy your very first agent.
Look, if you take away only one thing from this, let it be this. Building a great agent is an iterative process. You do not need to build a fully autonomous, all-knowing super system on day one. Please don't even try. Start small. Pick a well-defined problem. Get it in front of real users. See where it fails. Learn from it. And then, gradually, over time, expand what it can do. So, as we close this out, I'll leave you with a question to chew on. What's that one complex, multi-step workflow in your world, the one that's always been too tricky or too messy for automation, that you could finally tackle with an intelligent agent? Thanks so much for watching.